Folks, when we play the game of chess, there will be a certain time where we'd feel like we've just been washed. What I'm trying to say is, we don't enjoy the game 24/7. Everyone makes blunders, everyone will make mistakes, it's all normal. But what happens if you haven't played for a month or two, let's just say. But for this video, I will be showing you guys a few games I played yesterday. And oh boy, I've had a lot of fun. Hope you enjoy. So, the first game goes as follows. Pawn to e4, pawn to e5, the knight's out, and my bishop out. And here he plays bishop d6. It is a move, but why not the knight out, or even the pawn? Now, as ludicrous of a move that was, I was so stunned by the fact the bishop was there, I hung my knight in one move. Like, no hesitation, one move. Yeah, a knight just gone, one move. I castled because I gotta keep my king safe. And here we have a few more normal moves. Now, apparently it was better to go queen g4 because it does threaten the pawn as well, but oh well, we had a queen trade. I'll push my pawn in the center. Knight jumps in. Now, I try to defend the pawn, but I forget that the bishop is staring directly at the knight, and I lose a pawn. The game goes on. Here I attack the defender of the knight. We have a good trade, and now this knight in the center has no defenders. So, that was my main priority. It jumps in to c2, threatening the pawn. I defend it. And luckily for me, I can now trap the knight. But the bishop comes in, trying to counter-attack my rook because he was thinking danger levels. But what happens if I counter your danger levels? Now you have a hanging knight and a hanging bishop. So what do? You sack the knight for a pawn. You play a desperado because you're going to lose the knight anyway. Bishop comes back. The rook comes in. The pawn blocks. And here I tried to bring my king into the mix, but apparently it was better to move my bishop to c6. That move is too high level for me to understand. But here, he tries to open up the board, activating the rook. I say no thank you. And he moves the king away. Maybe he was afraid of my light square bishop. But there was no real threat just yet. And the best move here was to advance the pawn, but I took the pawn anyway. And here again, the best move is bishop c6. I don't know why the computer wants me to play that move, and apparently this is a blunder. Yeah, I know, it loses a pawn, but it's a blunder. We traded rooks. The rook checks me. And here, I took his bishop, he took my bishop. Instead of taking the d pawn, I tried to threaten the passed pawn even more. And in response to that, my opponent hangs back rank mate. Now, what's funny is, in the game, I did not know there was back rank mate. Yep, I was trying to find a way to win the rest of the pawns. Not even joking. So, here my opponent resigned, but if he did not resign, I probably would have lost the game. Now, this next game, I started off with d4. d6 is an interesting move because I rarely see that. 2 pawns in the center, like usual. My knight comes out. My third pawn controlling most of the center. And the queen comes out this early into the game. Now, I didn't panic and I just played bishop d2, defending against the pin. And the queen moves back. Knight jumps in, but it gets pinned. Now, this did not change the fact that I still attacked the center, although it would have been better to kick out the bishop first. Retreat. Knight comes in. And now kicking out the bishop is a wrong move. The bishop takes. My queen takes. And we have this trade. Yeah, it would have been better to take with the pawn. But I didn't really want to damage the pawn structure anyway. So, he develops the pawn, trying to bring out the bishop. And now we both castle. And here, if he did not castle, I would have taken on f7. But that did not happen. Here I threaten a classic checkmate with the bishop and queen. He blocks. And well, the computer here would have liked me to sacrifice my rook. Bruh. Because of this variation. The queen comes in, threatening some form of checkmate. The king runs. The king runs. And yeah, I would have won back the rook. And the reason why the king decided to run away here is because my queen could have came in to check. Anyways, all of that aside, because I played bishop to d2, adding more pressure to the pawn, and the knight tries to come in. But here I sacrifice the bishop to get to the king. He plays pawn to f5, stopping me from playing checkmate. And I played en passant, which apparently is an inaccuracy because I did not realize that I could have just taken on the pawn of e6. Yup, my vision still isn't that good. And unfortunately, like all human beings, we tend to make mistakes, and I hacked my rook in one move. I kept playing. The queen comes back. My rook comes in. The bishop... Bro. The knight comes in to block. But it's a blunder. Because apparently I could have just taken on the... Oh my... So... Wait a minute. Okay, so this variation is a bit more complicated. The best move was to trade the rook for the pawn. Because, well, I did not see that. I did not see that my queen and rook can team up against the queen, which is totally defenseless. So the best move is to literally do this. Now, none of that happened. And my opponent blundered the queen as well. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still losing for me because I am down material. And what's worse here is that I had less than a minute on the clock, around 30 seconds, and I panicked and lost the queen in one move. Boom. And the rest of the game cleaned up because my opponent sacrificed material to get the rest of the pawns. He pinned my pawn to the king, so there was no hope of me checkmating my opponent. And before I could get checkmated, I ran out of time. Now, I definitely enjoyed the brilliant sacrifice, but unfortunately it was not enough. This game right here is probably one of the funniest ones I have ever played. e5, e4, knights out. I played the Italian game again. He tried to go for the anti-fried liver defense. When, well, I can't just move my knight in when the queen is... Yeah. I strike at the center. And here I should not have taken on the pawn. I'm not exactly sure why, but I feel like that is a fair move. But here I sacrificed the knight because I could follow up with this check. And now I win the rook in the corner. But here comes the problem. Queen e4 check. Would you rather defend the king with a piece that is hanging, or just lose the bishop in one move. That's what I did. Okay. Well, it didn't end there. Here I bought my queen out because I didn't want it to get trapped. I blocked the attack and I tried to trade queens. Yeah. Tried to trade queens here. The bishop comes out, which is no longer defending the pawn on b7. But I trade queens anyway. I kick the bishop out, my knight comes in. Castle's long. I take the bishop because bishops are slightly better than knights, based on what most people think. And here I hang my bishop. Now, to the beginners that don't understand, my opponent can play pawn to b6, which traps my bishop, and in a few moves, that's what happens. My bishop is trapped. I try to counter-attack the knight, but the knight just moves. And I just sacrificed the bishop for the pawn. Nevertheless, I continued playing. I gave a check. I tried to win a pawn, and yes, I won 2 pawns. Even won a 3rd pawn. I'm slowly winning back material. And my opponent played bishop e2. I thought here I was going to win the knight by pinning the bishop to the knight. Unfortunately, I missed this move. So, if my pawn takes his pawn, the knight will fork me and the rook. If my rook takes his bishop, his pawn is unstoppable to promotion. So what did I do? I took the pawn nevertheless, because this is the best move. And here I don't even know why this is an inaccuracy. It's literally winning material, but oh well, high level stuff. The knight moves away. King comes in, this loses a knight. Apparently, this traps the knight. The rook comes in. And now I'm no longer trapping the knight. But here I had very little time. Like 20 seconds on the clock. I was trying to speed run moves. I tried trading the rooks, he backed off. Threatened the knight. Moved the pawn forward because create passed pawns. And here, I pinned the knight to the king. With only 15 seconds on the clock, can I make a comeback? I traded the rooks. I pushed the pawn. I pushed the pawn again. And with 0.04 seconds on the clock, I played the last move, pawn to f4, stalemate. Stalemate. Because it was going to be a draw nevertheless. Oh man. Like, the fact that I was able to get a draw out of this was already good enough. I was very panicked at that time, and I was not even realizing that this was going to be a draw, because my opponent does not have sufficient checkmating material. If back here my opponent did not just sacrifice the knight for the pawn and try to keep it on the board, I would have lost. But I was lucky enough not to lose this one. Now, this last game is probably one of my favorites. e4, Sicilian defense. I open up that center, we trade knights, and slowly bring our pieces into the game. And here, pawn to f4 was better, but we traded, and this permits the opponent to win material through an eventual fork, which I did not see. But this is still a good move. And here castling was wrong because I was supposed to hop the knight in. Yeah. I bring the queen out, not wanting the bishop to x-ray my queen. And I blundered. But my opponent did not find the blunder. The blunder was knight to g4, forking the queen and the bishop. My queen has to move and the bishop will be lost. And here, I hung the same move twice. But it did not get seen once. it probably won't get seen again, and that's what happens. So finally, I trade the bishop, and now I'm in a slightly worse position, but until now. Alright, couple moves back. I start my own attack, pawn to h4. He brings an attack down the queen side as well. I push the pawn forward. The knight jumps in, trying to threaten my queen. I move the queen to safety. But here comes the attack. Pawn to b4, but my knight is not threatened. I move it away, trying to threaten a fork on b6. The rook comes in to protect the fork, but now I take on the pawn. He takes with the f pawn, slightly more risky. I kick away the knight, and in this move, I trade in the knights, and I sacrifice the rook. Oh my gosh. In rare scenarios, I can sacrifice my rook like this. And here, it would have been faster to checkmate with the queen, but I brought my rook in. So came my queen. And luckily, I did not miss the checkmate in two. That's a wrap. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, as it will motivate me to make more videos like these in the future. Thank you to my viewers.